Nobody saw this coming. Caitlin Clark just stepped onto the international stage for Team USA, and within days, she started putting up numbers that had analysts scrambling to figure out if we were watching a debut or the beginning of something much bigger. We're talking about a player who hadn't seen competitive action in months, walking into a completely new system, new teammates, new pressure, and still controlling the pace like she'd been there for years. But here's where it gets interesting. While Clark was quietly taking over games, making reads before defenses could even react, and turning limited minutes into maximum impact, Angel Reese was trending for a completely different reason. Not because of performance, not because of dominance, but because of what was happening off the court and how fans started reacting to it. And once you see how these two storylines collided in the same week, you start to understand why the conversation around Team USA is getting louder, more divided, and way more intense than anyone expected. Because this isn't just about stats anymore. This is about momentum, perception, and who is actually taking control of the spotlight when it matters most. Almost immediately, the internet exploded. Fans, analysts, and commentators couldn't stop talking about Clark's debut. How a player coming off a months-long break was effortlessly rewriting the playbook, dropping assists like candy, and making every possession look effortless. And yet, somehow, all of this dominance only amplified one glaring contrast: Angel Reese's very public reaction to it all. And that's exactly what makes this story impossible to scroll past. You've got world-class performance clashing with off-court tension, creating a storm that's both dramatic and impossible to ignore. Every play Clark made wasn't just a stat, it was a statement. And every reaction from Reese wasn't just noise, it became fuel for the debate. By the end of the first game, the stage was set, not just for a tournament, not just for Team USA, but for a showdown between momentum and perception, dominance and reaction, performance and personality. And trust me, the internet was paying attention. Clark's debut for Team USA didn't just meet expectations, it shattered them. Coming off the bench against Senegal, she stepped onto the court like she owned it, and in just 19 minutes, she posted 17 points, 12 assists, and 0 turnovers. 4 of 5 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. The kind of efficiency most players only dream of. Team USA rolled to a 110-46 win. But the real story was Clark's ability to read the defense, push the pace, and find teammates before the opposition even had a chance to adjust. What makes this remarkable isn't just the stat line, it's context. Clark hadn't played competitive basketball in 239 days. Yet, she wasn't tentative, nervous, or cautious. She was excited, she was decisive, and in doing so, she delivered what can only be described as a historic performance. Those 12 assists? Not just impressive, they were the highest ever recorded by any player making their senior national team debut anywhere in the world. And she recorded the fastest double-double in debut history. No country, no gender, no precedent. Off the bench, in under 20 minutes. The entire tournament only amplified the effect. Clark finished with 32 total assists across 5 games, leading Team USA in every contest. She averaged 11.6 points per game, 6.4 assists, and a plus-minus of plus 109, the best mark of any player in the tournament, across every team. Every possession she touched elevated her teammates, turning ordinary sequences into seamless, record-breaking opportunities. By the time she left the court, the conversation had shifted. This wasn't just a strong debut, it was a statement. And while Clark was busy rewriting history on the scoreboard, Reese was navigating an entirely different narrative. Let's put what Clark just did into perspective, because the numbers alone don't tell the full story. That single-game debut? Highest assist total ever recorded in a senior national team debut. Fastest double-double. And only player across any country or gender to achieve it in her first game. Every stat line from that week wasn't just good, it was historic. By the end of the 5-game qualifier, she had broken 14 world records, earned the tournament MVP, and became the youngest MVP in the history of the event. Most of that tournament, she came off the bench. Let that sink in. The first ever player to take home an MVP while not being the featured starter, reshaping what it even means to dominate a tournament. And it's not just about basketball. This week compressed into 7 days what took most players years. Her efficiency, her ability to control the pace, her vision on the floor, it all created a ripple effect. Opponents had no answer. Teammates found rhythm before defenses could adjust. The system didn't just work for Clark, it amplified her, making her debut feel less like a trial and more like a blueprint for excellence. Meanwhile, Reese's presence was entirely different. While Clark was etching her name into history, Reese's reactions were drawing attention, but not for performance. The contrast couldn't be more stark, and that tension is exactly why fans and analysts couldn't stop watching. History was being written, and it was happening in real time. Across the full tournament, Clark didn't just perform. She dominated every measurable angle. Over 5 games in 7 days, she led Team USA in assists every single match, averaged 11.6 points and 6.4 assists per game, and posted a plus-minus of plus 109, the highest of any player in the entire field. And she did it in bursts of 19 to 23 minutes, not as the featured player handling the ball for the majority of each game. Her impact wasn't limited to scoring or passing. Clark dictated the pace, created opportunities before defenses could set, and consistently elevated teammates like Paige Buchers and Emily Bates, turning each sequence into efficient offense. Her presence reshaped how Team USA functioned on the floor, proving that dominance isn't about time played. It's about influence in every possession. By the time the tournament ended, Clark had not only rewritten records, she had rewritten the expectations for what a debut could look like. While Team USA cruised to decisive victories, the bigger story was Clark's ability to step into a new environment, take control, and leave an undeniable mark on history. And as Clark was compiling these historic numbers, Reese's actions were trending for a completely different reason. More about perception than performance, fueling debate, fan engagement, and online commentary. The contrast was impossible to ignore, and it set the stage for the rest of the narrative. Even the coaches couldn't ignore what was happening. Head coach Carl Lawson started the first game with Chelsea Gray at point guard, and the offense immediately struggled under pressure. The press disrupted every possession, and within the first minute, it was clear the system wasn't working. Clark checked in, and instead of faltering under the same defense, she weaponized it, reading the blitz, pushing the pace, and finding open teammates before the opponents could react. After that first game, Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts took over and adjusted the lineup, moving Clark into the starting role and building the offense around her strengths. He publicly admitted that not starting her earlier had been a mistake, an acknowledgement rarely heard in elite sports, but one that reinforced Clark's undeniable influence. These endorsements from authority figures did more than validate stats. They framed the narrative. It wasn't just fans noticing her dominance. It was coaches, analysts, and teammates recognizing that Clark wasn't just good. She was historically impactful. Every adjustment, every compliment, every recognition amplified her story, cementing her as the player around whom the team, and now the tournament, revolved. Meanwhile, Reese's responses remained reactive, defensive, and social media-driven, highlighting a growing contrast between performance-driven recognition and perception-based attention. This tension was now central to the story, keeping viewers glued to every update. By the end of the week, Clark's dominance was undeniable. 14 world records broken, tournament MVP, youngest MVP in event history, and the first MVP ever awarded to a player who spent most of the tournament coming off the bench. Every milestone added another layer to a narrative that was already impossible to ignore. Clark didn't stop at accolades. She showed up in the very next game and kept producing at the same historic level. Her approach wasn't about the awards. It was about consistency, control, and proving that these achievements weren't a fluke. Fans, analysts, and teammates all noticed this was a player redefining what it means to debut at the highest level. And while Clark was stacking awards and records, Reese was generating headlines for entirely different reasons. Complaining about recognition, reacting publicly, and failing to create the same level of on-court impact. The contrast was stark. One player was dominating every aspect of the game. The other was reacting to that dominance. This week set the tone for everything that followed. Clark's trajectory was upward, historic, and unstoppable, while Reese's narrative was reactive, controversial, and increasingly scrutinized. The stage was set, the records were shattered, and the conversation had already begun. Clark's dominance didn't stop on the court. It immediately translated into unprecedented commercial influence. At just 24, she secured a series of endorsement deals that most athletes only dream about. Her partnership with Nike isn't just a typical deal. It includes a signature shoe line with revenue sharing, the kind of structure normally reserved for LeBron James or Michael Jordan. Wilson followed, creating a signature sporting goods line for Clark, making her the first athlete since Michael Jordan to receive that level of commercial attention. Then came State Farm, where Clark became the first female athlete ever to serve as the primary endorser for the brand's marketing campaigns. And just when people thought it couldn't get bigger, Gatorade signed her to a record-breaking deal for a female athlete, followed by Prada, cementing her as a figure in both sports and luxury fashion. To put this into perspective, during her rookie WNBA season, Clark earned an estimated $8.1 million in endorsements, compared to a base salary of $70,000 on the court. That's 115 times her on-court earnings. Her rookie year didn't just break records in basketball. It reshaped how sponsors, media, and fans perceive value in women's sports. Meanwhile, Reese's commercial story looked very different. Her Reebok line struggled to generate traction, with shoes sitting on clearance racks months after launch, and marketing support reportedly pulled back entirely. The contrast between Clark's commercial ascent and Reese's struggles wasn't subtle. It was a textbook case of influence meeting opportunity, and the market was clearly signaling which athlete commanded attention. Clark's dominance on the court created a platform that magnified her commercial value, while Reese's responses, focused more on perception than performance, highlighted the growing gap between success and influence in the WNBA. Clark's influence extended far beyond stats and endorsements. Her presence in the WNBA and on Team USA reshaped how the league is viewed, drawing record TV ratings, filling arenas, and forcing networks to take women's basketball more seriously. Games she played in became must-watch events, and attendance spiked in ways the league hadn't seen in years. Sportico named Clark the most influential female athlete of 2025, not just in women's basketball, but across all sports. Their methodology went beyond social media and Google searches. They measured cultural influence, commercial reach, and the ability to move markets. Clark ticked every single box. Her rookie year didn't just bring individual accolades. It created ripple effects that changed the business around her, proving that dominance on the court drives power off it. Meanwhile, Reese's story unfolded in stark contrast. Her off-court narrative centered on reaction, complaints, and attempts to claim recognition, rather than influence or measurable impact. In the cultural arena, Clark's performance translated directly into visibility, authority, and market disruption, while Reese's approach highlighted perception without substance. The takeaway was clear. When Clark succeeds, the sport grows, brands invest, and audiences engage. And that made the upcoming season not just about wins on the court. It was about who controls the conversation, the momentum, and ultimately the spotlight. By the end of the tournament, the contrast between Clark and Reese was impossible to ignore. On one side, Clark had 14 world records, tournament MVP, historic stats, and commercial deals with Nike, Wilson, Gatorade, State Farm, and Prada. On the other side, Reese's narrative revolved around a public reaction to Clark, a signature shoe line struggling on clearance racks, and brand scaling back support. The gap wasn't subtle. It was stark, measurable, and trending in one direction. Clark's influence touched every facet of the sport: performance, culture, business, and fan engagement. Reese's influence, meanwhile, was reactive, focused on perception, and lacked measurable traction. Analysts highlighted that a significant portion of Reese's stats came from offensive rebounds off her own missed shots. In other words, she was earning credit for correcting her own mistakes. While Clark was systematically building record after record, Reese was generating headlines without substantive performance. Every time Clark hit a milestone, Reese found a way to insert herself into the narrative, not to celebrate, but to compete for attention. This pattern traced back to college and continued into the WNBA. Public posts, vague social media complaints, and attempts to claim awards created risk for her brand partners and highlighted a growing disconnect between effort and influence. Clark's Nike launch and Kobe Player Edition sneakers sold out instantly, reselling for double retail, proving real demand. Reese's Reebok shoes, however, languished on shelves and in discount bins. Marketing support for her line was reportedly pulled back entirely. The market was sending a clear signal. Clark's commercial and cultural power was real, while Reese's failed to resonate at the same scale. Fans, brands, and media were all watching, and the comparison was unavoidable. During the same week, Clark broke 14 world records and won the MVP. Reese reportedly suggested she deserved an award too. Not based on stats or performance, just the idea. Social media and fans erupted. Clark's dominance and measured approach stood in stark contrast to Reese's reactive behavior, fueling debates, comments, and viral engagement. This wasn't just about basketball. It was a story of momentum, perception, and who commands attention in sports culture. Let's run the numbers. Caitlin Clark, 14 world records in 7 days. FIA Tournament MVP, youngest MVP ever. Most influential female athlete of 2025, Sportico. Nike signature line plus revenue share. Wilson, Gatorade, State Farm Prada deals. Angel Reese, struggling Reebok shoe line. Clearance racks. Brands scaling back support. Public complaints about recognition. The gap is clear. Clark's trajectory is upward, unstoppable, and historic. Reese's narrative is reactive, inconsistent, and losing relevance. Do you think Angel Reese deserves a spot on Team USA? Or is Caitlin Clark clearly the dominant force right now? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest updates. Click the video on the screen, and we'll see you in the next one.